In Job's story, we meet these two characters, Leviathan and Behemoth. And if you were to ask most people about them, they would probably describe them as purely mythical creatures, so large, so powerful that no person could ever deal with them. Maybe only God could deal with creatures like this. Harper's Bible Dictionary, though, gives us this on Behemoth. Behemoth was a mighty mortal beast that he served as an object lesson for Job, and was probably originally the hippopotamus. But intertestamental authors and later rabbis understood Behemoth to be of mythic significance. And the Oxford Dictionary for the Christian Church has this to say about Leviathan: a mythological sea serpent or dragon, mentioned several times in the Ugaritic texts, the Old Testament or Hebrew scriptures, and later Jewish literature. The Leviathan of Psalm 104, verse 26, has sometimes been identified with a whale and with that of a crocodile. And in Isaiah, the name was transferred to the devil. While certainly both imposing animals, a hippopotamus and a crocodile, and with considerable strength and unpredictability, today, really, we have means of subduing both of them. Those means, though, weren't present in biblical times. And when I started to read more about their nature, I began to wonder about our basic understanding of these mythical creatures. Most of us would have just stopped at the mythical understanding and not looked at the practical. Most of us have built these creatures up to be larger than life. And there is part of me that wonders if we haven't done that with other obstacles in our life too. What are the other obstacles that we face? The devil, maybe, as shown in this slide. Do we make them larger than they really are? And while the obstacles may be strong and unpredictable in some ways, do we contribute to our inability to deal with them because we think that they're bigger than they really are? How do we come to some sort of resolution, some sort of understanding of how these problems impact our lives? Well, resolution is certainly something that we're looking for as we get to the end of Job. At the beginning of Job's story, we hear that Job has lost all of his livestock. In Job chapter 1, verse 3, Job had 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, and very many servants. So this man was the greatest of all the people in the East. And here, in today's reading, we hear that all of those things are replaced twice over. From Job 42:12, the Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning. And he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. Sounds like a pretty good deal. He gets twice of what he had before, even though he had to suffer for a good long while between losing them and getting them. But there is still one part that's missing. Job's children, his 10 children. This from Job chapter 1, verse 2. There were born to Job 7 sons and 3 daughters. They too are replaced. We hear in Job 42, verse 13. Job also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. However, that hardly seems to me like a good resolution. Certainly we can accept the replacement of his livestock, but we can't replace people. And while I'm sure his 10 new children would have been some comfort to Job, they definitely wouldn't have been the resolution that he would have been looking for. One of the church's scholars by the name of N.T. Wright has this to say in a recent book about God and the pandemic that we're in. He writes, "The book of Job doesn't really have a resolution. Not a satisfactory one. There is a short happy ending, but it's only partially happy. Job gets more sons and daughters to replace the ones he lost. But does that make it all right? I would venture to suggest that it doesn't. It may, again, as I said, bring Job some comfort, but it wouldn't have been the resolution that he was looking for." And he goes on to say, "I think part of the point of Job is precisely its unresolved character." And he says, alongside this Israel and God story, there runs the deeper story of the good creation and the dark power that from the start has tried to destroy God's handiwork. I do not claim to understand that dark power. As I shall suggest later, I don't think we're meant to. We are simply to know that when we are caught up in awful circumstances, and Job was certainly in awful circumstances, apparent gross injustices, again, true for Job, terrible plagues, or when we are accused of wicked things of which we are innocent, suffering strange sicknesses with no apparent reason, let alone cure. At those points, we are to lament, we are to complain, we are to state the case and leave it with God. God himself declares at the end that Job has told the truth. Job has clung to the fact that God is just, even though his own misery seems to deny it. So yes, in this 5-week series with Job, we have a less than happy ending. And Job has a choice on how to respond to the disappointments in his life. We too have choices on how we respond to the disappointments in our own lives. I'm sure that even in Job's long life afterwards, his disappointments didn't go away. However, he was able to go on living for double the typical span of life. May we, as followers of Jesus, find ways to go on living in the new life that is promised to us in our baptism, the life that comes after death, the hope that comes after disappointment. For then people will know that we too believe in a God that is just. We too will be known as Jesus' disciples. And for that, we give thanks. Amen.